This is a fictional story inspired by courage, composure, and quick thinking under pressure. Late afternoon in a quiet street of Mexico City. The sun casts long shadows across the pavement. A man walks alone, calm, deliberate, and unassuming. He wears a simple dark jacket and jeans, carrying nothing but a small backpack. There's no entourage, no cameras, no signs of celebrity, just a presence that radiates focus and awareness. Around him, the neighborhood hums with life. Street vendors call out softly, children play near doorways, and pedestrians move along the sidewalks, absorbed in their routines. Yet, amidst this ordinary bustle, tension is quietly building. A group of rough-looking men appears ahead. Their gestures are aggressive. Their eyes fixed. There is no subtlety in their approach. It's clear they intend trouble. Pedestrians glance nervously, instinctively stepping aside. Some freeze, unsure whether to act or flee. But the man does not panic. He does not shout, run, or draw attention. Instead, he stops, his gaze steady. He scans the environment calmly, noting exit routes, obstacles, and the spacing of the attackers. His body is relaxed yet alert, a perfect balance between readiness and composure. The air seems to thicken with anticipation. The attackers move closer, voices rising. People begin to whisper, some hiding behind parked cars or around corners. Yet the man in the dark jacket does not flinch. His presence alone subtly shifts the energy. There is no challenge, no provocation, only quiet authority, awareness, and control. Pedestrians are left asking themselves, who is this man? Why does he seem so calm when danger approaches? In that moment, the story teaches a simple lesson: courage is not loud. It does not demand attention. It manifests quietly, in observation, awareness, and the calm choice to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. And so, the scene is set. A potential confrontation looms, but the outcome remains uncertain. One thing is clear: the man walking these streets possesses something far more powerful than aggression or force. He possesses calm, clarity, and the presence of mind to turn a dangerous situation into a lesson in composure and strategy. Backhand index pointing right question hook. What would you do if a threatening group appeared before you, and the person in front of you stayed calm instead of panicking? This fictional story begins with tension, observation, and quiet power, the first step toward a dramatic, cinematic, and inspiring sequence. The man walking calmly down the Mexico City street was Keanu Reeves, but not in the way the world usually knows him. In this fictional story, he is traveling to understand local culture and human stories for a new film project, quietly, without entourage or security. He wants to experience the city as it really is, alive, unpredictable, and full of surprises. Keanu has trained in martial arts and self-defense for decades, but this is not a story about showing off skills. It is about preparedness, awareness, and the quiet strength that comes from discipline and focus. He knows that the most dangerous situations often arise unexpectedly, and that calm observation is often more effective than aggression. He has walked streets like this before, blending in, noticing details that most people overlook. A broken sidewalk tile, a shadow moving across a wall, a sudden change in body language. All of these small signs tell a story about the environment. By the time anyone notices, he is already aware. Keanu prefers a low-profile approach. No flashy gestures, no drawing attention to himself. He moves like a shadow, alert to his surroundings but unthreatening. This fictional version of him is thoughtful and composed, understanding that real confidence comes from preparation, not intimidation. The city itself adds to the story. Narrow alleys, bustling markets, street vendors selling bright fruits and handmade goods, children playing soccer near the sidewalks. All of these elements create a rich, dynamic setting. It is a city full of life, full of unpredictability, and full of people who could be potential allies or bystanders in an unexpected confrontation. Before today, Keanu had spent weeks quietly observing and engaging with locals. He learned to understand their movements, patterns, and rhythms. He noticed how people naturally space themselves in crowds, how vendors interact with each other, and how even subtle gestures can indicate tension or friendliness. This careful attention to detail allows him to anticipate situations before they escalate. He is not there to fight. He is there to learn, to experience, and to interact respectfully. But he is prepared. His training, experience, and calm mindset give him a significant advantage. not because he wants to use force, but because he understands the importance of presence, strategy, and situational awareness. Even the pedestrians around him notice something unusual. His calm demeanor amidst the bustle commands subtle attention. People instinctively trust that he is aware of his surroundings and that he is not careless. They sense that this is a man who can navigate danger not through ego or aggression, but through clarity, observation, and focus. This fictional backstory establishes the key lesson. Courage and preparedness are not about confrontation. They are about awareness, calmness, and the ability to act decisively when needed. The stage is set for the encounter to follow, a moment of tension that will test composure, strategy, and quick thinking, while leaving a lasting impression on both the fictional characters and the audience. In this story, the foundation of Keanu's strength is mental clarity, discipline, and the respect for the environment and people around him. These qualities will soon determine how the approaching threat is handled, not with arrogance or aggression, but with skill, composure, and quiet authority. The calm of the late afternoon street began to shift. A group of rough-looking men appeared around a corner, their footsteps heavy and deliberate. Their body language was aggressive, their gestures sharp. There was no question about their intent. They were approaching with confrontation in mind. Pedestrians instinctively stepped aside, some ducking behind parked cars, others slowing their pace to observe. A few whispered to each other, "What's going on? Who is that man?" But the figure in the dark jacket remained calm, almost unnervingly so. He did not flinch. He did not panic. Keanu's eyes scanned the situation quickly but carefully. He noted how many men there were, their spacing, and the speed of their approach. He assessed the environment, narrow alleyways, potential obstacles, and escape routes. Everything he observed would help him maintain control without resorting to violence unless absolutely necessary. The men were closing in now, their voices raised. They shouted and gestured, attempting to provoke a reaction. Many would have panicked, but Keanu stood still, projecting quiet confidence. His posture was relaxed yet alert, shoulders squared, hands at his sides, weight evenly distributed. He was ready to move, but only with intention. He knew something crucial. Confrontation does not require aggression. Often, the most powerful presence is one that communicates awareness, composure, and control. His calm demeanor made the attackers hesitate, even for a moment, because it disrupted their expectation of fear or submission. The street around them was filled with subtle tension. Vendors paused mid-sale, children stopped playing, and pedestrians held their breath. Every small movement mattered. The attackers were aggressive, but not particularly coordinated. That would soon make a difference. Keanu's mind worked like a chessboard. He visualized the options, stepping slightly to the side to keep distance, positioning himself where movement could be controlled, using verbal de-escalation to establish authority. His training and experience had taught him that the first action can set the tone for the entire encounter. Panic leads to mistakes. Calmness leads to opportunity. One of the men lunged forward aggressively, a move meant to intimidate. But instead of reacting violently, Keanu adjusted his stance, maintaining balance, projecting confidence, and speaking firmly, "Step back. This doesn't have to escalate." His voice carried calm authority. The other men froze, caught off guard by the unexpected composure. This moment of hesitation was critical. It gave him a subtle advantage. The attackers were no longer dictating the pace. He was setting it. The quiet intensity of his presence communicated something far more powerful than physical strength alone: awareness, strategy, and control. For the pedestrians watching, it was almost surreal. Here was a man, calm, measured, and unafraid, facing a group who expected fear and reaction. Their confidence faltered as his quiet authority became the defining factor. The tension in the street had reached its peak, but the outcome was still uncertain. What mattered was not the fight itself. It was how composure, strategy, and awareness could turn an imminent threat into a moment of control and reflection. The air felt heavy. The street, once alive with movement and chatter, had fallen into a tense silence. The group circled closer, their confidence built on numbers and intimidation. But the man standing before them, Keanu Reeves in this fictional story, did not look intimidated. He looked focused, grounded, ready. One of the men stepped forward aggressively, trying to provoke a reaction. Instead of stepping back, Keanu shifted slightly to the side, a subtle movement that created space while keeping his balance strong. It was not dramatic. It was precise. His voice was steady. "Take a breath," he said calmly. "This isn't worth it." There was no anger in his tone. No fear either. Just clarity. The attackers expected panic. They expected pleading. They expected chaos. Instead, they were met with composure. And composure is disarming. The second man moved in closer, attempting to grab him. In one fluid motion, controlled, efficient, Keanu redirected the momentum without striking. A small pivot, a shift of weight, and the aggressor stumbled off balance. Not injured. Not attacked. Just neutralized. Gasps echoed from nearby pedestrians. What stunned everyone wasn't aggression. It was efficiency. Every movement was economical, measured, and defensive. There was no unnecessary force, only control. Another attacker hesitated, unsure. That hesitation was everything. Confidence within the group began to fracture. They were used to overwhelming victims quickly. But here, the dynamic had flipped. Keanu adjusted his stance again, positioning himself where only one could approach at a time. He used the environment, a parked car to one side, a wall behind him, to limit angles. His awareness was tactical but subtle. "Walk away," he said again, firm but calm. The leader of the group, frustrated, rushed forward recklessly. But speed without control is weakness. With another precise movement, Keanu sidestepped and redirected him past his own momentum. The attacker stumbled forward, nearly colliding with his own friend. There was no dramatic fight. No cinematic barrage of punches. Just discipline. Timing. Awareness. The street began to shift. People who had been hiding now watched in disbelief. The group that had arrived loudly and confidently now looked uncertain, even embarrassed. One of them muttered something under his breath. Another took a step back. The psychological balance had completely changed. Here's the truth the story highlights. Strength is not loud. Skill is not chaotic. Real power is controlled. Keanu never chased them. Never escalated. He maintained distance and dominance through posture and awareness alone. And that's when the realization hit the attackers. This wasn't an easy target. This was someone trained. Someone disciplined. Someone calm under pressure. Their bravado faded. One by one, they backed away. Not because they were beaten violently, but because they were outmatched mentally and strategically. The leader shot one last frustrated look but signaled retreat. Pride wounded more than bodies. Within seconds, the group dispersed down the alley they had emerged from. Silence returned to the street. For a moment, no one moved. Then a vendor exhaled deeply. A child peeked from behind a doorway. The world slowly resumed its rhythm. Keanu straightened his jacket slightly, as if nothing significant had happened. He scanned the area once more, not to boast, not to threaten, but to ensure everyone was safe. A bystander approached cautiously. "Are you okay?" He nodded with a faint smile. "I'm fine." No adrenaline-fueled speech. No dramatic celebration. Just calm acknowledgement. And then he walked on. That was what truly stunned everyone. Not the confrontation. Not the speed. Not the skill. But the control. In a world where aggression often dominates headlines, what people witnessed was something different. Composure under pressure. The ability to neutralize danger without unnecessary harm. The power of awareness over panic. The attackers had expected fear. Instead, they encountered discipline. And in that instant, they regretted misjudging the quiet man walking alone. Because sometimes, the strongest person in the room is the one who doesn't need to prove it. For a few seconds after the group disappeared down the alley, the street remained frozen in disbelief. The vendors who had paused mid-transaction slowly returned to their stalls. A child who had been hiding behind a doorway stepped back onto the sidewalk. Conversations resumed, but now, they carried a different tone. "What just happened?" someone whispered. It hadn't been a chaotic fight. There were no dramatic brawls, no reckless violence. What people had witnessed was something far more unexpected. Control. Precision. Calm dominance without cruelty. The man at the center of it all, Keanu Reeves in this fictional story, didn't linger. He didn't gather attention or wait for applause. After scanning the area one final time to ensure everyone was safe, he simply continued walking, blending back into the rhythm of the city. But the witnesses would not forget. A vendor replayed the scene in his mind. The way the attackers had approached confidently, the way their momentum had been turned against them without unnecessary harm. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't cruel. It was efficient. A young man who had recorded part of the encounter on his phone stared at the screen, stunned. "He didn't even look angry," he said quietly. "He just looked focused." Within hours, word began to spread through the neighborhood. Some described it as a fight. Others corrected them. No, it wasn't a fight. It was like he knew exactly what to do. By evening, short clips circulated online. Blurry angles. Partial footage. But enough to spark conversation. Viewers weren't talking about violence. They were talking about composure. Comments poured in. "That's how you handle pressure. No panic. No ego. Just control. Strength without cruelty." What truly captivated people wasn't the confrontation itself. It was the discipline behind it. The restraint. The refusal to escalate. In a world where conflict often spirals out of control, this moment felt different. It was a reminder that power doesn't have to be loud. That confidence doesn't require intimidation. That training and awareness can defuse situations before they become tragedies. The next day, local conversations continued. Some exaggerated the story, turning it into legend. Others focused on the lesson, the importance of staying calm under pressure. Meanwhile, Keanu, still traveling quietly in this fictional narrative, avoided publicity. When someone mentioned the incident to him at a cafe, he responded simply, "Sometimes walking away is the real win." There was no bragging, no storytelling, just a subtle acknowledgement that the situation could have gone very differently, and that restraint had been the key. The deeper impact of the event began to unfold in subtle ways. A shop owner installed better lighting outside his store. A group of young men in the neighborhood discussed enrolling in self-defense classes, not to fight, but to build confidence. Parents spoke to their children about awareness and avoiding risky confrontations. The ripple effect wasn't fear. It was empowerment. What stunned everyone most was not that the attackers retreated. It was that they had been neutralized without humiliation or serious harm. The confrontation ended without chaos, without escalation, and without lasting damage. And perhaps somewhere, even the group that initiated it felt something shift. Maybe they realized they had underestimated calm strength. Maybe they understood that intimidation doesn't always win. The city moved on, as cities always do. Traffic returned. Vendors called out to customers. Laughter echoed through narrow streets once more. But the story remained, not as a tale of violence, but as a reminder. Composure changes outcomes. Preparation prevents panic. Control commands respect. In this fictional moment, what began as an attempted attack became something else entirely, a quiet demonstration of discipline and awareness. And that is why the regret was instant. Not because someone was defeated brutally. Not because someone was humiliated, but because the attackers realized too late that they had misjudged a man whose greatest weapon was not aggression, it was calm. In the days following the confrontation, the story continued to echo, not because of chaos, but because of clarity. What people remembered most wasn't aggression. It wasn't dominance. It wasn't even the retreat of the attackers. It was the composure. In this fictional narrative, Keanu Reeves became a symbol of something rare in high-pressure situations, controlled strength. And that distinction matters. There's a difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is emotional, immediate, uncontrolled. Responding is deliberate, measured, intentional. What the street witnessed that afternoon was the power of response over reaction. Most people, when confronted by aggression, experience a rush of adrenaline. Heart racing, thoughts scattered, instinct pushing toward fight or flight. It's human. It's natural. But discipline changes the equation. Discipline teaches you to breathe when others panic, to observe when others freeze, to calculate when others lash out. The fictional encounter became a reminder that preparation is invisible until the moment it's needed. Years of training, awareness, and mental conditioning don't show on the surface. They reveal themselves only under pressure. And that's the deeper shift in this story. The attackers relied on intimidation, on numbers, on unpredictability. Their strategy depended on creating fear and chaos. But when fear didn't appear, when chaos wasn't triggered, their advantage disappeared. Calmness disrupted their script. There's a powerful psychological truth in that. When you refuse to play into aggression, you remove its fuel. True confidence doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't need validation. It stands steady, even when surrounded by noise. For viewers, the lesson extends beyond physical confrontation. Most of us won't face a street ambush, but we will face pressure, conflict, stress, unexpected challenges, a heated argument at work, a sudden crisis, a moment where emotions surge and clarity fades. The principle remains the same. Pause. Assess. Control your breathing. Choose your response. The fictional story reminds us that strength is not about overpowering others. It's about mastering yourself. Self-control is the highest form of power. What made the moment unforgettable wasn't physical skill alone, it was restraint. The refusal to escalate. The decision to end the confrontation as quickly and safely as possible. That restraint is rare. And that's why it resonated. In a world that often glorifies aggression, the quiet display of discipline feels almost revolutionary. The moral shift is this. The strongest person in the room is not the loudest. The most capable individual is not the most aggressive. The most respected presence is often the calmest one. Confidence built on preparation creates peace, not chaos. Even the concept of instant regret takes on a different meaning here. The attackers regretted their decision not because they were violently defeated, but because they misjudged the situation entirely. They encountered someone who did not react emotionally. Someone who operated from awareness rather than ego. And ego cannot compete with discipline. This fictional story ultimately invites reflection. Are you training your mind as much as your body? Do you react impulsively or respond intentionally? Can you remain steady when pressure rises? Strength is built in silence. Composure is practiced daily. Respect is earned through control. The street incident may have lasted only minutes, but the lesson lasts much longer. Real power is quiet. Real courage is calm. Real strength is controlled. And sometimes, the greatest victory is walking away, unchanged, unshaken, and completely in command of yourself. The street eventually returned to normal. Vendors reopened their conversations. Children resumed their games. Traffic flowed once again through the narrow lanes of the city. If someone had walked by an hour later, they would never have known anything unusual had happened. But for those who witnessed it, something had shifted. In this fictional story, the encounter involving Keanu Reeves was never really about danger. It was about discipline. It wasn't about overpowering opponents. It was about mastering the moment. And that is what stayed with people. The attackers came with noise, numbers, and intimidation. They left with uncertainty and regret. Not because they were crushed, but because they were confronted by something they didn't expect: composure under pressure. There's a powerful lesson hidden inside that contrast. Aggression depends on reaction. Intimidation depends on fear. Chaos depends on panic. Remove those elements, and the entire structure collapses. What truly stunned everyone was how quickly the energy shifted once calmness took control. A situation that could have spiraled into chaos instead dissolved into retreat. Not through brutality, not through rage, but through awareness, positioning, and presence of mind. And that's something anyone can learn from. You don't need fame. You don't need physical dominance. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room. What you need is control over yourself. The ability to slow your breathing when tension rises. The discipline to assess before acting. The strength to respond instead of react. That is real power. This fictional moment reminds us that courage is often quiet. It doesn't shout. It doesn't boast. It doesn't chase validation. It simply stands firm when pressure arrives. In everyday life, the attackers may not be people on a street. They may be stress, criticism, setbacks, or unexpected problems. They may be moments that test your patience or challenge your confidence. And when those moments arrive, the question becomes, will you react emotionally or respond deliberately? The man in this story walked away not because he avoided conflict, but because he controlled it. He didn't escalate. He didn't linger. He ensured safety, then continued forward. That forward movement matters. Life doesn't pause for conflict. It continues. And the greatest strength lies in moving ahead without carrying chaos with you. So as this story ends, the final message is clear. Train your mind. Build your awareness. Practice composure daily. Because when pressure comes, and it always does, your calmness will determine the outcome more than your anger ever could. The street forgot the noise, but it remembered the discipline. And sometimes, the strongest message isn't delivered through force. It's delivered through quiet, controlled confidence that speaks louder than any shout ever could.